Hey all, Lupine Sojourner here, back with another reading of Chapter 1 of Lightning's Child. Last time I did read only the prologue, so this will be Chapter 1, and again a link will be in the description below, and I hope you all enjoy. 2 or more hours were spent running before we were able to halt. As Aragorn leapt off the path of the tracks we were apparently following, I couldn't see them beyond the trampled grass from my companions, and was soon back, reporting that one of the halflings, Pippin, I think Aragorn called him, had left the group of their captors and tossed what appeared to be a leaf, stiff and frozen, but it soon became apparent that it was some kind of brooch, meant to fasten something together or be for mere decoration. Aragorn and the others look on it grimly. Not idly do the leaves of Lorien fall, Aragorn notes heavily. I frown. What does this mean? I ask, suddenly noting that all 3 of the men I run with have gray embroidered cloaks fastened about their necks with the same brooch that lay dirty in the man's hand. It means we are on the right track, and that our friends still have the use of legs and reason, the slender blond man, who had introduced himself as Legolas during one of our brief rests, replied. Aragorn had often accounted for the Uruk-hai's changing position and pace by merely lying on the ground, listening intently, and so gave us brief rests I took to eat what the men call lambus bread, as well as drink water. I was amazed that my friend could read the earth like that, and knew better than to question him, as he was, so far, leading us in what I think is the right direction, according to the flat grass trail we run along. Gimli, now a few feet behind me, comes stumbling over a rock, tumbling over the edge and coming clumsily to his feet. Come on, Gimli, Legolas, Lady Rowena, we're gaining on them, Legolas calls back eagerly, striding forward before turning his head and starting to run. I'm wasted on cross-country. We dwarves are natural sprinters, Gimli moans, stumbling forward. I blink. Okay, I think I remember dwarves being in the books. Very dangerous over short distances, he explains. I nod. If you can speak, you can run faster. Come on, I call, picking up the pace and ignoring the slight dizziness and light-headed feeling clinging to me, more prominent in my left side. It was only getting worse, and I knew that once I stopped, I would need to sleep for as long as our hasty pursuit allowed, probably. So I pressed myself harder and made what energy I had left count. Suddenly, Aragorn and Legolas come to a halt and peer across the land. Rohan, home of the horse lords, Aragorn informs me as I draw up next to him. I frown a little, panting, wondering what that might mean. Aragorn's panting a little as well, but seems okay to carry on. I am bent double, however, barely upright with my hands on my knees. Stars dance before my eyes and I blink them away, straightening up again. Something strange is at work here, Aragorn notes, frowning as he scans the area again. Some evil gives speed to these creatures, sets its will against us. That's just great, I grumble sarcastically, leaning against a nearby rock outcropping as I try to regain my breath. At least we're gaining on them, right? Legolas nods, then looks directly at me. Lady Rowena, are you all right? I nod through the resurging stars and spots, taking in air with a measured calm I didn't feel. The ringing had intensified as I pressed myself closer to collapse. I'll be fine, I replied, taking a proffered nip of lambus. This bread was sweet and yet sustaining, light and yet rich. It also does not give me cramps as I run. A real marvel to behold. Life seeps a little bit back into me and I feel steadier. Legolas and Aragorn then move out, Gimli and I coming along behind. Aragorn halts again after 2 hours, Legolas running to a higher rock to have another look around. Legolas, what do your elf eyes see? Aragorn calls. I wasn't entirely shocked by the different races anymore. After all, he seems a little too good-looking to be entirely human. And I'm embarrassed to say I just now noticed the pointed ears. Legolas, however, continues his search before replying. The Uruks turn northeast. They're taking the Hobbits to Isengard, he calls back. Aragorn frowns, eyes growing worried and desperate, eyes still scanning the area. I cock a brow at the mention of Isengard. I can't exactly remember what that means. Aragorn notices. Home of the evil wizard Saruman, he tells me. I nod. Right. That was the Uruk-hai creator's name, if my memory serves me right. I remember now that it was said aloud and I didn't have to dig it purely out of memory. We press on until noon with only a brief moment to get water and a hasty breakfast beforehand. Now that our hunt was nearing its end, my mind turned to what would happen when we reached our friends. I was in no condition to fight, and I imagined neither are my companions if it really came down to it. However many enemies there were, we stood a little chance of actually taking them out and retrieving the halflings that had been stolen. I still didn't know much about what was happening, too focused on working through my present pain and exhaustion to really try and remember. Legolas halts for a moment to scan the sunrise, and his eyes widen. A red sun rises. Blood has been spilt last night, he whispers. I swallow, wondering whether or not it was the Hobbits, but unwilling to drag everyone else's mood down by verbalizing my thoughts. Another few hours and we halted as Aragorn consulted the ground again. And suddenly there was a noise like thunder. I stiffen, the phantom pain of electricity sending a prickling sensation across my chest and down my left side, as well as a whistle. I frown, running with the men to a rock we dodge behind. The thunder increases, and suddenly there is a great number of horses and riders tumbling past us down the hill. Evidently, Aragorn recognizes these riders and is soon on their outskirts without fear. Aragorn! I hiss. He doesn't even look at me, cupping his hands around his mouth in order to increase the volume of his voice. Riders of Rohan! He calls. What news from the mark? He asks, and at the head of the charge, a tall man in a helm with a plume of horsehair. That's what it looks like. That, coupled with the fact that this was apparently the land of the horse lords, leads me to believe I'm right. Raises a spear, and as one, the entire troop turns and comes swinging back around. I take a step out with Legolas as the horses approach, unable to hear anything over the ringing in my ears and the thunder of hooves. As the riders come closer, they spread out, and before I fully realize it, we're surrounded, and any chance of slipping out of the circle of horses was lost. We tense, me, however, wanting nothing more than to collapse in exhaustion. The horses tramp and stamp, but come to a standstill at their master's direction, the men looking as tense as we are. I suddenly find myself in the circle of the men I'd run with, as the riders' spears come down and point themselves at our chests. Tense seconds tick by as we await the man's next move. The man who had signaled his men to turn around, bearing himself in a proud, authoritative manner, comes forward confidently into his men's thicket of spears. What business does a man, a woman, an elf, and a dwarf have in the Rittermark? He demands harshly, as if annoyed at being halted from his business. I then wait for Aragorn to have the first word, to decide where this was going to go. Speak quickly, the man snaps. I flinch slightly, and in so doing, unleash a sudden pounding in my ears as I sway on my feet a little. Legolas steadily offers his arm as I lean as little into the support as possible. If I were to draw attention to myself, it may cause problems and further hindrance on our quest. And we needed all the speed we could muster. Tell me your name, Horsemaster, and I shall tell you mine, Gimli replies cockily, leaning smugly on his axe handle. The man glares at the dwarf, hands his spear to a nearby rider, and dismounts, before stomping forward furiously. I would cut off your head, dwarf, if it stood but a little higher from the ground. The man seethes through gritted teeth. Gimli looked nonplussed. But suddenly the support of Legolas was withdrawn, and I was left to fall abruptly down, the stars and spots nearly stealing all of my vision, my head whirling painfully. So that's all for Chapter 1. Again, hope you enjoy, and feel free to check out any of my other stories following the link.